Hey everyone, welcome to another devotion as we continue our For the Generations to Come worship series. We're going to read from Luke chapter 16 today, which is a crazy text where God essentially says, take advantage of me. So let's read the text and we'll talk about it. Jesus told his disciples, there was a rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possessions. So he called him in and asked him, what is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, because you cannot be manager any longer. The manager said to himself, what shall I do now? My master is taking away my job, I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do, so that when I lose my job here, people will welcome me into their houses. So he called in each one of his master's debtors. He asked the first, how much do you owe my master? 900 gallons of olive oil, he replied. The manager told him, take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 450. Then he asked the second, and how much do you owe? 1,000 bushels of wheat, he replied. He told him, take your bill and make it 800. The master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light. I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. I will read the rest of the text in a little bit, but I just want you to get the story in your mind quickly. There's a rich man, right, who has all sorts of money, and he has hired a guy to take care of that money. And there's this accusation against the guy who's taking care of the money that he is misspending it, or that he's maybe laundering some of it, or there's something wrong with the accounting. So the manager feels like, well, I'm probably going to lose my job here, and I don't have day laborer's skills, and I can't work with my hands, and I really don't want to beg, so I got to figure out something to do. So what he does is he brings in the guys who owe his master money, and he cuts their debts. The first one he cuts in half, from 900 to 450. The next one he cuts down by 20%, from 1,000 to 800. And guess what? The master comes back and says, good job. Like, way to use the wealth that was at your disposal to earn for yourself friends in the long term. Because what would inevitably happen is those people who got their debts cut in half, they would think to themselves, well, that's a pretty good guy. You know what? Next time I'm around him, I'm going to trust him. I'm going to give him my business. I'm going to do whatever for him because he made that positive relationship. So what is the text telling us? What is this parable of Jesus telling us? Well, whenever there's a master, it's almost always God. And in this case, that is true also. The manager is you. God has given you amazing wealth. And even though there maybe is not an accusation against how you spend your money, although if you look at the law, very often the law accuses every one of us of misspending our money, the truth is that your time on earth is coming to an end, in the same way that that manager's job was coming to an end. Eventually, you're going to die, and well, you can't take it with you, like the text that we're going to read from 1 Timothy is going to tell us on Sunday. And so what God is saying here is you have only so much time, and you have all these resources that God has given you. How are you going to manage them? Are you going to manage them just to get by? To keep your job? To feel good about yourself? Or are you going to use them to get work done? Because something's coming after this life. And it matters far more than what's happening for the 70 or 80 years that you get to live here. Let's see what the rest of the text says. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So, if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. So Jesus puts a point on it, doesn't he? He says you can take the things that God has given you and you can use them to your own advantage for your whole life and feel pretty good about yourself, have a pretty good life, and maybe be very comfortable, but at the end of your life, it's not going to matter. No matter how nice your car is, no matter how nice your house is, no matter how many fine places you've eaten, fine drinks you've had, how secure your life has been, it will not matter when you breathe your last. And when you breathe your last, it will matter whether you serve God or money. Now, interestingly, what happens next really gets under our skin. Look at how the text finishes. The Pharisees, who loved money, heard all this and were sneering at Jesus. He said to them, "You are the ones who justify yourselves in the eyes of others, but God knows your hearts. What people value highly is detestable in God's sight." Now, a couple things to notice. The Pharisees would have been the most religious, most well-behaved, probably the best people that you knew in that generation. They were the people that you wanted to see whenever you were going to the store or have as your next door neighbor. You wanted to see Pharisees everywhere because they were just really good people. But Jesus said something was going on in their heart. They loved money. They loved attention. They loved acknowledgement. They loved what the world loved. And God doesn't just say that's not good. He says it's detestable. Do you love what the world loves? Do you love the things that are on the commercials? Do you look at your next door neighbor or the person you work out with and you wish you had what they had? It's detestable. Now understand, I'm not saying that God wants us to be impoverished. He wants to give us good blessings, but if for a second we think that is going to really make us happy, that is really going to make us comfortable, that attitude is detestable to God. Now, I'm guilty of this. I think about money more than I should. Not probably, I definitely think more about money than I should. And it's terrible. Every time I'm worried about budgets or income or spending, I spend so much time worrying about how I'm going to control my own life to fix it for me and my family so that I can be happy or they can be happy. And the truth is, all of that, it has to come second to God. And so in this series, we're talking about generosity. But there's a point where generosity becomes trust. Think about it. If you got $20,000, you won the lottery or somebody died and gave you a huge amount of money, and you gave 1,000 of those dollars to your church. Would that be generosity? Definitely. I mean, you don't have to give that to church. That's an amazing gift that God has given you. Is it trust, though? Is it putting your life in God's hands? Or is it giving God enough to placate Him while you continue to keep your life in your hands? Now let me push this a little bit farther. What if you received $20,000 and you gave $20,000 to church? Would that be generosity? Absolutely. It would be a great act of generosity, but would it be trust? I'm afraid it probably wouldn't be. Because you would still be living on the same income that you had been living on before. You would essentially be saying, "Here, God, have everything, but I'm going to still keep what allows me to control my life." So what's Jesus' point here? You can't serve both God and money. Either you will trust money or you will trust God. And God has given you amazing wealth, not so you can trust in it, but so that you can use it to bring other people to trust in Him. So how's that look for your family? How's it going to look to give until you trust? If you're willing to do that, Jesus says that your master will commend you. He will look at you and say, "That is how I want people to manage my resources." Now that's going to be a different number for every family. For our family, I haven't come to that number yet because I'm still scared. I'm still praying for God to work in my heart, a heart of generosity that puts enough money on the line that I have to trust God. That I can't say, "I've got this." I've got to say, "God's got this." So take advantage of God. God has given you these resources. He doesn't want them back. He wants you to use them. And we as a congregation are going to use our resources to reach out to more people than we've ever reached out to before. I pray that you become part of that through generosity that changes lives. God bless. I'll see you on Sunday.